let's talk about that catchy title, full fiscal autonomy. When do you want it?
We have put down an amendment to allow the Scottish Parliament to dictate the timing of the transfer of powers, and we'll be backing our amendment.
Yeah, but when would you like? I mean, would you like it in a year, in a couple of years, in 3 years?
We want it as soon as it can be possibly be done. And remember, of course, this comes under the rules that were agreed, the principles that were agreed in the Smith Commission. And Principle 6. Which I know you're familiar with, is the one...
Every night I read it.
It's worthwhile doing it because it was a very good principle that all parties signed up to, and that said that things should be devolved when there's no financial advantage or disadvantage.
Right, and at the moment there's a disadvantage, isn't it, as far as you were concerned, because there would be this black hole?
Sorry, no, that's not what it means.
Well...
It means if you devolve, for example, let's say you devolved all of income tax, then exactly that amount that was raised by all of income tax would be deducted from the block grant. That's what the principle meant. That's a very good principle to adhere to.
Right.
Now, our amendment is an extremely good amendment, backed by the Scottish people, of course, in the recent election. And if the government has any sense whatsoever, they'll accept the mandate of these 56 out of 59 MPs and accept that amendment.
Right, but we still don't know when that is. I mean, there is a lot of talk about process. I did say this to your colleague Stuart Hosey, and all we're trying to establish here is an aspiration, well, for him or for me, but an aspiration in terms of when it could happen. Because at the time of the independence referendum, there was talk of it being within 18 months. That sounded like a reasonable... Well, hang on, there was, Alexander, there was talk about it being possible within 18 months. It was something that you wanted to have relatively soon. Now, as you know, everyone is putting to you this idea that you don't want it because there would be a black hole or a deficit, I agree, in your finances.
But for 2 of the last 4 years, there would have been a surplus.
Sure, but at the moment there would be a deficit.
Yes, but that's why the Smith Commission, quite rightly, identified a principle there should be no financial advantage or disadvantage, because we're not devolving for 1 year, we're devolving for many years.
So it could be a long time in the future, is what you're saying?
The amendment is the right one. The amendment we've put forward allows the Scottish Parliament to decide when to invoke the full fiscal responsibility. And that's why that amendment, backed overwhelmingly by the Scottish people, should now be accepted by the government.
All right.
Otherwise, the consequences might be rather unfortunate.
You've mentioned the consequences. When you say unfortunate, are you going to make the sort of threat that Stuart Hosey has?
I didn't regard it as a threat.
Did you agree with him? Because actually it's not the same words as Nicola Sturgeon, who said there should be a gradual move to any second independence referendum, whereas Stuart Hosey, as you know, you will have read the reports, has said if we don't get what we want, then actually that might trigger a second independence referendum.
I actually took the precaution of reading the underlying interview in the Financial Times as opposed to just the reports.
Well,
Stuart Hosey didn't say that. Stuart Hosey said there will be consequences if the Westminster government ignores a mandate from the Scottish people. But to answer to your point directly, Nicola Sturgeon and the Scottish people will determine the timing of the next independence referendum.
Right, but that hasn't answered the question. I mean, he actually said if the British government failed to go further than the devolution package on offer, it could trigger another ballot. You were the man who said as First Minister that actually an independence referendum, the result of which would settle that issue for a generation. Well, that's gone, hasn't it?
Well, I always said that, in my opinion, constitutional referendums were a thing that came across once in a political generation, and I used the example of the 18 years. I mean, I know exactly what I said in these matters. I always used the example of the 18 years...
It implied something different, though, didn't it?
No, I always used the example of the 18 years between 1979 and 1997, the two devolution referendum. But you may have noticed that I'm not leader of the Scottish National Party
I have noticed it.
And therefore, my opinion is one opinion among many. The person who will decide these matters is Nicola Sturgeon, taking the temperature, reading what the Scottish people are thinking. And, of course, Stuart Hosey is right. One factor in that examination as to whether there's a change in material circumstances will be whether or not the Westminster government is prepared to acknowledge and accept and respect this overwhelming mandate from the Scottish people.
Yes, because she says we can't... Nicola Sturgeon says we can't rush it. We lost the independence referendum, we didn't persuade the majority, and there's no shortcut. But you are saying that Stuart Hosey's right in the sense that if you don't get what you want in terms of powers... that was the quote from the interview.
I'm saying that Nicola Sturgeon, as leader of the Scottish National Party, as First Minister of Scotland, in consultation with the Scottish people, will decide the timing of the next independence referendum.
Let's have a look at what you'll do with the powers that you will have before any full fiscal autonomy. The Scotland Bill will deliver those. What are you going to do with them?
Well, to give me a power, and I shall tell you what we're going to do with it.
The Scotland Bill will give the Scottish Parliament new powers, including control over income tax rates and bans. Of course, you've had a proportion of VAT raised in Scotland and air passenger duty. Take anyone. What will you do?
Let's take air passenger duty. Then our plan would be, well, you just
no,
mentioned it. Sorry.
No, I was going to say just do the first one. But all right, do air passenger duty
well, you
first.
mentioned it.
Yes, I did. I mentioned
Sorry,
it, but you go ahead.
Well, a good example here, passenger duty, we've done a calculation and analysis which indicates that if we reduced air passenger duty in Scotland, it would attract more direct flights into Scotland. That would bring in more revenue from the APD that was left, even though you've reduced the rate. But of course, one of the parts of that analysis would tell you that the more control over other taxes you have, like for example VAT, then the more income will be generated from the additional tourism that would come from the direct flights. So an example of air passenger duty, we would seek to reduce it.
What about raising the top rate of tax? Yes, it is. All of these specific policies are useful because people know, will you raise the top rate of tax to 50 pence?
The power we're getting just now in the top rate of tax is that you have to raise all of the tax bands at the same time, and that's one of the deficiencies we're going to be trying to attack.
But you
we didn't say we're going to raise all of the tax bands.
No,
we were supporting an
Labour.
increase in the top, but that's not what we have at the present moment. We have a situation where the Scottish Parliament would or the Scottish Finance Minister would have to raise all of the rates of taxation in order to raise the top rate.
So
now,
I'm just asking, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying that's not something you can guarantee at this moment that you would do.
No,
because for the reasons you've said.
Yes, because we're going to try and change the legislation.
And the same with the bedroom tax as well.
Oh, no, we're going to abolish the bedroom tax. We would have the ability to do that under these proposals. So you've got a reduction in air passenger duty, the abolition of the bedroom tax, and we're going to seek to increase our powers over income tax so as we can achieve our objectives for a fairer society.
Well, there are some policies then.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex Salmond.